Hello everybody, it's Geekosaurus Mike here. Now, as you probably deduced from my location and how I'm talking right now, this isn't an actual review. This isn't in the main continuity of the story. It's just something that I thought I'd put up here to let you guys know I'm still around. I've got a job now, and that eats up a lot of my free time. There is a new review on the way, just to let you know. What I am here to do today, though, if you follow me on Facebook or Twitter, you already know this. A lot of people like to avoid the question of who would win in a fight. There's a couple reasons for that. You know, there's never going to be a real answer for it. You can argue whatever you want, and most of the time it just generates more bad feelings than anything else. But I think it's a lot of fun to answer these questions as best I can, and that's what I'm going to try to do today. I'm going to try to answer some of the most asked who would win in a fight, mostly staying within superheroes. Get more to that at the end. If this does well, I may do more of them, but for right now, let's get on with probably the most famous, or at least most frequently asked question of all: who would win between Batman and Superman? Now, I want to get this one out of the way first because it could really go either way. I have no answer for who would actually win in this fight, because there are legitimate arguments for both sides. Superman, if you're on that side, you could make the argument that if Superman just decided, I'm going to off Batman, he's too strong and fast for Batman to do anything about it. He wouldn't have time to prepare, and that's a completely valid argument. But if you're on the Batman side of things, you could counter that by saying Batman knows about Superman. He always has a contingency plan. He's always prepared for him, and that's equally valid too. What that fight really breaks down to, Batman vs Superman doesn't break down into a battle of continuity. It really breaks down to the writer, because it could so easily be argued both ways. Now, I'm sure that people would tell me I'm wrong and Superman would clearly win or Batman would clearly win, but I just think that, it would be close. Well, okay, it wouldn't be close, but I don't think that there's a definitive answer. You could be like Frank Miller and, say Batman would win, but he'd let Superman win, whatever. You could just say Superman destroys him, like kind of happens in Red Son. It's up to the writer. There's no battle of continuity there. So let's move on. Going kind of a Marvel versus DC, there's two people that I often see Batman put in imaginary fights with, and those two are Iron Man and Captain America. The similarities between the characters are probably the thing that makes people wonder the most. Batman and Captain America are both supposed to be kind of the pinnacle of physical human achievement, whereas Batman and Iron Man are two, incredibly preposterously rich guys who fight crime more or less using their money. So, it makes sense that you would ask that question. Now, Batman vs. Captain America has actually been answered officially. Again, you can argue it. There's no such thing as an official answer. Batman loses the fight between him and Captain America in DC vs. Marvel. I think that they say that he loses. I don't know if the graphic novel version's missing a page or what. I don't see how it happened, but there's also a Justice League Avengers crossover in which Batman sort of mulls this question over, and he, in that continuity, said that the fight would last hours. They're the most evenly matched characters of the two universes, but that Captain America would eventually win. So that's kind of the answer there. Again, you can argue it. Do what you will. As for Batman versus Iron Man, I think that one, I can't say that one, I think would pretty easily go to Batman. Simply because Batman has had to deal with, technological based villains who would be comparable to Iron Man. He's had to deal with that, and Batman is constantly fighting people who rely on technology like that. He's constantly fighting people who are technically stronger and faster than him, and he's always coming out on top. I think he'd beat Iron Man pretty soundly, actually. I think that it wouldn't take much to assume that he has something on his belt or something on his costume that will short out the Iron Man armor. I don't think that would be an issue at all. I'm trying to think of a way Tony Stark could win. Tony Stark, I suppose you could argue that Tony Stark is smarter than Batman, and Batman's a master detective, but Tony Stark is supposed to be on real levels of genius. But then again, I mean, that genius is in engineering, so... I think one of Iron Man's biggest weaknesses in that kind of a fight would be that if you've read Civil War, which I did review on, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. If you've seen Civil War, or if you've played Ultimate Alliance 2, Iron Man essentially makes this claim that he has all of the superheroes' fighting styles and all of their moves essentially recorded into his armor, so his armor can automatically, best them, anything. And he doesn't have that advantage with Batman because they're in two different universes, and I think Batman his combat style has enough fluidity and adaptability that the Iron Man armor couldn't compensate for it. And like I said, with the amount of technological-based supervillains that Batman's had to fight in the past, it would not be much of a stretch at all to say he has something that can just short out the Iron Man armor. So that's my stance on that. Now, after the Avengers movie, a question a lot of people might be asking is if the Hulk versus Thor fight was to be allowed to play out, which one of them would win? Okay, so I have a philosophy when it comes to the Hulk in any fight. Eventually, the Hulk will always win. That's... Okay, let me explain this. When Bruce Banner transforms into the Hulk, I think of that as Hulk at his base strength. He's just transformed, he gets no bonus from anger. And in that continuity, there are 3 people that I can think of who are stronger than the Hulk at his base strength. That's Thor, Abomination, and Juggernaut. They're all technically stronger than the Hulk at that point, but here's the thing. The Hulk will continue to get stronger the longer the fight goes, whereas Thor or Abomination, they won't get stronger in the course of that fight. And you could say, okay, well, they just have to beat them in the beginning. Well, or they just have to beat the Hulk quickly. That's a lot harder, and I would almost argue that'd be impossible to do, because the Hulk does have a healing factor. I think that the Hulk, what the fight would boil down to essentially would be the Hulk takes punishment for long enough, and eventually the scales are going to tip in the Hulk's favor. You could argue with Thor that he does have more combat experience, he's more of a seasoned warrior and has a much more refined fighting style, and like with the Superman Batman's arguments, that's valid. I just can't see a situation in which Thor would be able to finish the Hulk off permanently enough for the Hulk's anger to not eventually tip the scales with just brute strength. To back this up, if you've seen Hulk vs. Thor, the cartoon movie that came out I want to say it came out the year before the Thor movie came out. I think that's right. Anyway, essentially that's what happens. The Hulk is just so angry that Thor doesn't stand a chance. No holds barred match, fighting to the death. You could argue that, Thor could finish the Hulk, but I don't know, I don't see it happening. I think the Hulk is too durable. I think he would take the punishment long enough to become angry enough to beat Thor. That's just what I think of that one. Now we get to the one that I get in the most heated debates about, and that is, we're kind of almost breaking away from superhero territory, and that is Superman versus Goku. I watched Dragon Ball Z growing up. I loved watching it. I came home every day from school and was like, Dragon Ball Z, woohoo! So, I don't have any bias, but honestly, I think Superman would win. I can't see... Okay, I can see why people think Goku would win. The show is more or less based on continually proving how overpowered Goku is. You know, the Saiyans started off being able to destroy planets and only got stronger from there. It kind of started at ridiculous. I always called that Dragon Ball Z syndrome. I called Bleach that when Ichigo started getting ridiculous powers. I call any show where they start ludicrously strong and get even more so. I call that Dragon Ball Z syndrome. Kind of a tangent. Back to the thing. Superman, I think, would win. I think Superman's more durable. If you remember in the FMV, the first Broly battle, or was it the second Broly? Anyway, one of the Broly fights, you know, Broly's the legendary Super Saiyan. He's probably got the highest power level in main continuity. You can debate whether or not GT is legitimate or not. Anyway, the way they beat this legendary Super Saiyan, who just beat the hell out of all the other Saiyans, is they throw him into the sun. You know, heart of the sun, let that burn him up. And the reason I bring this up is because in the Justice trilogy by Alex, it's one of the ones that's been drawn by Alex Ross. In the Justice trilogy, Superman gets infected by these nanobots created by Toyman that are essentially going to start controlling him. So he looks at Captain Marvel and he goes, you know, we got to get these things out of me somehow. Throw me through the sun. Because, you know, he goes through the sun and burns him up. My point there being that the super legendary God Saiyan that was Broly, you know, he is ultimately destroyed by being thrown into the sun. Superman, as far as durability goes, gets thrown through the sun to ostensibly cure himself of a cold. Captain Marvel even says that, well, because in the scene before that one, Superman had essentially gotten his ass kicked. He got hit by Kryptonite, and then Bizarro started beating the hell out of him. Anyway, Superman wasn't strong enough to get him through the sun. Captain Marvel makes some comment to the effect of, had he been at full strength, Superman could have thrown himself through the sun and been fine. So I think Superman's got durability. Speed is a trickier factor because it really depends on the continuity. You know, faster than a speeding bullet. In the movies, he's fast enough to break space and time to the point that it causes time to reverse, which isn't how relativity works, but, you know, whatever. He's fast enough to just shatter physics, which I'm 90% sure Goku, he's at least never done it if he can do it. In Red Sun, like I rant about in my review for a while, he's 10 times faster than thought. I mean, Red Sun Superman's entire goal was he was undefeatable and he was incredibly overpowered. And I think Red Sun Superman would just break Goku's neck instantly. I don't think that's even a contest. In any case, I think in most continuities you could make the argument that Superman's faster than Goku. As far as flight speed go. Reaction time, all that, you can debate that until the cows come home. But I honestly think that Superman would be faster than Goku in most continuities. And the big factor would be strength. Again, strength is something that really depends on what continuity of Superman you're looking at. And the advantage that Dragon Ball Z has with trying to sort of quantify Goku's abilities is that it's one consistent series, whereas Superman has so many different versions, so many different continuities. It's hard to say. In the beginning, you know, Goku's easily stronger. That was the Superman who, you know, could just leap tall buildings and all that. Silver Age Superman he'd definitely be stronger. Silver Age Superman is the one who could just move the planet out of the way of the asteroid. He could blow out a star, a full-size star, like a birthday candle. Like that, that's just a thing he could do. You know, you can debate about Ki Blast versus Heat Vision and Ice Breath, and you can debate all that, but I don't think Heat Vision, I don't think either of those would really be what tips the scales. You know, one big advantage that Superman has over Goku is that, you know, Goku takes 5 episodes to charge the Spirit Bomb, and Superman, you know, he'll punch him in the next panel. If it were made a team battle, and I know I'm not even going to get into that today, that might be for a later day. So Superman versus Goku, I think Superman would win. Would it be an instantaneous fight? By no means. I think Goku would have to be at least Super Saiyan 2 or 3 to even be able to hang with Superman. He'd have to start out the fight at one of those levels for there to even be a fight. Again, GT, you can debate whether or not that's an actually in continuity. Akira Toriyama wasn't a part of that. They essentially kept the series going because it was so popular and making so much money. But that's beside the point. I know I keep saying this, but bottom line, Superman wins. Leave it like that. And that is... that's all the fights that I had posted on Facebook that I would talk about. So yeah, nothing I've just said here is a definitive answer. You can always, in fiction, you can always argue. It can go an infinite number of ways. Obviously, none of the people that I've mentioned would actually be fighting to the death. They would never. It would never happen. It's because they're all heroes. The Hulk's iffy, but it would never happen. You can debate either side, and you're never going to be proven objectively wrong. So yeah, to each their own opinion, and again, a lot of people like to avoid the who would win in a fight because it just sparks so much debate and fanboy rage. I'm fine with that. If it sparks a huge YouTube debate, then I'm getting views and comments. What do I have to complain about? And if it sparks a huge debate on the forums on my blog, which you can find here, again, what do I have to complain about? It's giving me traffic. So I just see this as a win-win for everyone. But yeah, that's who I think would win in those fights. Now, for future videos, I would be more than happy to have a who would win in a fight series. But to do that, I would like to have I'd like to have viewer submitted scenarios to do that. I don't want to just keep coming up with my own, because Superman versus Batman is an obvious one. Superman versus Goku is an obvious one because everyone on the internet asks at one point or another. But I don't want to presume that you guys would be interested in the same fights I'd be interested in. So I would like I would like some suggestions for future fights to talk about. And I've got most of the next review done. I'll tell you that it is a free comic book day examination. Most of that's filmed. I've got quite a bit of it edited. It's just a matter of getting the rest of the footage. And yeah, so have fun.